the liquid sky, in the fire, like the flame clean and burning dry. In the human race, on a dirty place, come on, in the perfect game. Fuck right, let's go, and we live, and we're in the wind, but we feel. Fuck right, let's crawl, and let's all there, and no one's gonna take our fall. Fuck right, let's go. Getting bored, down from heaven's doors. Red winds on the cold corridor. Gonna fade to black in the wrong path. It's just shake, and the pleasure is all like fake. My God, let's kill, and we will, and we're lingering monkey still. Fuck right, let's crawl, and let's all here, another drink in our mouth. Fuck right, let's kill, let's kill, let's kill, let's kill, right now. Whoa!
Okay, this is Jimmy Jive, and you're listening to Motor City Rock Talk. Today, my guest is guitarist, vocalist from a band that's been playing in the Metropolitan Detroit area a good number of years. One of my producer turned me onto this band. I was going to go see him open up for the Dogs this last summer, but they had to cancel, unfortunately, so I didn't get to see him. Anyway, the name of the band is The Strains, and today I'll be talking to the guitarist, vocalist, Miss Paul Smith. How you doing, sir?
Oh, I'm doing great.
Anyway, let's start out with a little background. Tell me a little bit about where you're from originally and what bands or music influenced you as you went on.
Well, I'm originally from a town a little bit south of here called Cincinnati. I was born and reared there. And from there, I kind of came somewhat nomadic and moved to Minneapolis. I lived in San Francisco for a while in the 80s. Originally, like, busking around. Eventually, I probably in the late 80s when I landed in Minneapolis, I ran into a cat that was looking for a guitar player, and I had barely been playing guitar at all, like electar especially, but I joined this band and immediately hit the ground running, wound up touring a bunch in the late 80s and early 90s, playing like CBGBs and all over the Midwest, and then ended up in Europe at some point and ended up staying in Europe for 20 years where I started a band called Dumbbell. Dumbbell existed from like 95 until I moved to Detroit in 2012. Dumbbell did their last tour in 2013, and then I kind of thought, well, I need to take a break. Break didn't last long, and I started the Strains around 2018, I want to say, 2017, I can't remember. Kind of just to, do something. I had no intentions of touring, but as it happened, we're touring. So.
That's cool. Who would you say were some of your earliest influences then?
That's easy. I mean, like the first band I can remember loving was the Beatles. But like as I got older, like some of my bigger influences would have been like Devo, Black Flag, Stooges, MC5, The Damned, and The Saint, and The Wipers. Those were some of my top artists that I would roll as a young dude growing up, and a lot of hardcore stuff like, Circle Jerks, Angry Samoans. But, I kind of stuck to the rock stuff and less of the breakneck beat punk stuff.
Right.
Even though those elements do seep into my songwriting quite often. Kind of like the music is almost like a hybrid between like New York punk, Detroit rock, and early hardcore element times, I would say. So.
Yeah, that's kind of pretty much what I hear too. I think it sounds a little bit more rock than punk, at least on the album you have out on Spotify. I can definitely hear elements of punk in there as far as that. Are you then the sole songwriter in the band, or does anybody else contribute?
More or less. On the upcoming album, there's going to be couple of collaborative songs where, like, you know, a riff idea might have started with someone else, and even some of the stuff on the last album, and I would note it where somebody would start a riff, like maybe the bass player would start a riff, and I would, you know, say, okay, that's kind of co-written by them. But I like the vocal melodies and the lyric, the meat of the songs, I always write them from top to bottom. If not, I notate it as such.
I see.
The next album that's not out yet, that's got a collaboration. The drummer from the Cult Heroes and Frankie, who was a bass player, he came up with the main riff, and then I wrote on top of the main riff with, you know, a vocal melody and the lyrics, and like gave it a chorus, and, you know, built the song out on top of his riff. So I'd like to give credit where credit's due. And another song was written by one of my German colleagues from a previous band where, you know, he kind of helped construct the song. So yeah, there's a little bit of collaborative effort here and there, but by like 95% of the stuff I write from top to bottom.
Okay. Who are the current members of the Strain?
The current members of the Strain are Greta Smack on guitar. That's our 4-foot 11 3/4 pistol whipper. On Fender Mustang, we've got Jamie Holiday on guitar, Les Paul Custom, and Nasty Attitude. That's Jamie. We've got on bass Kellen. He's 22 years old. That's Greta's son. He's a whiz kid and a real prodigy. Probably a better guitar player than all of us, but we're going to make him pay his dues playing bass. And on drums, on the album, we have Leon van der Horst from Amsterdam on drums. On some songs coming up on the next record that we're working on that ain't out yet either. Like I basically have 3 albums in the bag. Coming out soon. I'm already writing album 3 and 4. 3 is pretty much done, 4 is starting. And there's been a bunch of different drummers, but currently, because Leon couldn't come on the tour, we're going on tour with Handsome Dick Manitoba from the Dictators. Since Leon can't come, we're Al King from Powertrain, and he also played, I think he played with Mitch Ryder as well. He'd have confirmed that, but I believe so. And he was in Mazinga, a very good band from Ann Arbor with Chris Taylor and Tony Farrow. He played with them. So Al is currently the drummer, and I'm writing songs with Al, and it's going pretty well. And I play guitar and sing, but we have 3 guitars, because on the records I realized we had 3 guitars, and I also play in a band with Wendy Case called the Royal Sweets, and that 3 guitars for a while. And I thought it pretty cool, a great idea, because, well, most records you hear in 3 guitars on the record. So why not present that live? And it gives me a chance kind of focus more on singing and playing punch points on the guitar for dynamic purposes live, which is pretty effective, I think. And we have everyone in the band is a good singer, so we're able to really perform live what we did on record, which to me was super important. You know, I failed to mention one of my biggest influences is early Alice Cooper.
Oh yeah,
musically speaking, and you could hear some of that too, I'm sure.
Absolutely. Now, as far as the Strain, do you have a home base in Detroit metropolitan area that you guys rehearse, or? Yeah,
we're in Detroit. Well, technically, I'm in Warren now. I've got a recording studio in Warren, and we rehearse here. Sometimes we'll rehearse in Dayton, because we have at Dayton, Ohio. Some of our members live there, and we'll travel down to Dayton and rehearse there. But by and large, we rehearse up here.
Is that also where you recorded the album that's out now and the future stuff?
Yeah, we recorded the album here in Warren. It was mixed by our former bass player Pete Bankert, who's quite a stick and a pretty good producer. I did the engineering, and then I sent him the tracks and he mixed it. And the old album was me, Pete Bankert, Greasy Carlisi, Andy Pikiotowski. We recorded that album live. It was probably right after the COVID lockdown, and we had our first rehearsal. We didn't play in 6 months, and I just had mics on everything and recorded it live, and I was like, holy crap, that's not bad. And we mixed it, and it was our first album.
So you do just have out right now just the debut album, The Strains?
That's correct.
Okay.
We have a 7-inch coming out on I-94 Records that will be out at the end of February, and that's part of their Detroit series, and the Dogs are putting one out too. It is we're covering a Detroit band on one side of the 7-inch, and on the other side is an original song, and we're covering the Torpedoes. Checking out.
When do you think the new material, the new album might be out? You said end of February? Is that what you're hoping for? or is that the single?
No, that's when the 7-inch will be out. The new album, I'm not quite sure what's going to be out. We're being shopped and shopping up a few prospective labels. Like, because I've always been a DIY kind of guy, at least for the last few decades. I've always put out my own records on my own label. I had distribution, so it made sense. But since I no longer have distribution, we only, sell the records online or at shows. The vinyl is sold of the debut album, which I don't have anymore. They're gone.
So you did put the first album on vinyl. First one was on vinyl.
We also had it on CD. I put some CDs left, but the new one, we're in talks with a couple different labels. It's going to be a real monster of a record. I don't like to mix my own band. I don't mind tracking my own band, but it's a lot of work. I'm writing the songs, I'm doing the engineering and the tracking, and then if I have to mix and master it, I end up getting burned out on it.
Oh, sure.
And I want to step away from it after tracked and trust in somebody else to mix it. That's why the first album was mixed by Pete, and he did a great job. The second album is being mixed by Steven van der Vaaf from Amsterdam, who played with us on a European tour when Greasy couldn't go. And he's a good guitar player. He's a young guy, and he's got a really good ear. And he made an album that I played and performed on that's out on Alternative Tentacles called the Tony Slug Experience. Who was Tony Slug was an old comrade of mine. I played in a band with him in Europe called the Nitwit. He was in a band called BGK, and he's also in the Hydromatic, Scott Morgan. And I was also briefly in the Hydromatics, at least for a tour. So Tony and I have collaborated a lot over the decades, but unfortunately Tony passed away before the album was released. Had cancer, and it got him. At least the album was finished and sounds fantastic, and I think it's a good representation of who he was musically throughout his life. He was a very, very dedicated rocker and punk rocker. He could play anything. He was very opinionated gentleman, funny as hell, and super talented. And so that's how I met Steven and Leon, is through Tony. Those guys helped me out a lot with getting this record done. Leon played drums on it. He's a fantastic drummer. We're not sure what label's going to bring it out. There's a couple processes. If nothing else happens, I'll just put it out myself. I really, in this modern day and age, I'm more than able to rid myself pressing of a record and a CD and a cassette, believe it or not. I sold cassettes and I sold out quick.
I know. Cassettes are popular again, that's for sure. As far as your songs that you write, and like I said, you write the majority of them, do you start out with like a hook, or do you have a lyric line you come up with first and write the hook around it? What is your
That's interesting that you asked that. What happened, I kind of start off like a hypnotic lick. A lick is usually the first thing that happens. Like I'll be going like, then I'll come up with a guitar riff, fat riff behind that.
Right.
And then the next thing that happens isn't lyrics, just this kind of chanting that I'll start doing. That's not really words or anything. It's just like nonsense, vowels and consonants weaved together in a cadence that I think sounds good, and it's got a little bit of a melody to it. After that word, I kind of have an out of body experience when I'm writing songs. It's kind of bizarre.
Yeah.
It's hard to describe. And what's funny is a lot of I've got a song I've been rolling the last few days. Me and Al came up. Al started off, he was playing a lick on my couch on my Martin guitar. I just hear this kind of hypnotic Stooges riff. It's just and then in my I'm dozing off in my bedroom, and I start to think of a riff going on top of it, and the next thing you know, we've got a song.
Right.
And I listen to the gibberish that I'm singing, and it actually pick words out of it, even though there's no word, and it ends up being really kind of bizarre poetry.
Do you tend to write, as far as your lyrics, stuff from personal experiences or from stuff that's in the news or you've heard of?
I'd say more personal experience, bad experience.
Right.
Because contentment is the enemy of creativity, they say. I've rarely written a happy song. I wrote a happy song about my dog, and I'm embarrassed about it. But I shouldn't.
No, you
know
shouldn't.
what I mean? It's like on acoustic guitar. I just started strumming, thinking about the dog and the funny things the dog does. But generally, I only write about things that impacted me negatively. Much later in life where I started to like kind of become an adult. So I've seen horrible stuff, and it's enough to last me 2 lifetimes. So there's still enough canon, even if I'm at the time I'm happy, I could dig into the past and find something that bums me out enough to write about.
Now, the other thing I found in my little bit of research about you personally is that you had played with Paul from The Replacements, and I can't remember who the other guy was.
Bob Benson from The Replacement and Greg Norton from Husker Du. That was all touring. Like, I was in a band called Shotgun Rationale from Minneapolis. That was the first band I was in, and it was led by this guy Sonny. Husker Du had broken up, so we were on tour, and Greg Norton from Husker Du played with. Greg Norton, I was probably 20 when I played with him or something, and he thought my guitar tone sucked, and he wasn't afraid to say so. Like, you sound like a chicken scratching the ground. I'm like, you know, almost about to be in tears, because obviously this is one of my heroes, and you know, he's considerably older than me, and I dogging me. I was like, oh my God. Now Bob Stinson, on the other hand, he, you know, we toured Europe, him on guitar, and he was a maniac. That guy could play his ass off. So could Greg Norton on bass. Like, Greg Norton's a bass player, obviously. Stinson, I loved The Replace, but as soon as Stinson was out of the band, I thought they kind of stunk.
Right.
And it's just because they lost a lot of the insane edge that he brought to the band. But Bob was a pistol. He was a maniac on the road. It was very entertaining. But once again, I was a young dude, and I just took this all as normal. But I think if I, you know, in hindsight, that would have been like 9/2 that I toured with Bob Stinson. If I had to do that now under the same circumstances, I probably would have lost my mind and like put him in a headlock and dragged him to the ground and said, stop it.
So was that, when you say you're playing with Stinson, was that with The Replacements, or was that a side gig?
Side thing. That was in Shotgun Rationale. Because of Stinson, I got demoted to bass. Like, I was playing guitar in that band, and then along comes Bobby, and I was playing bass, which I was fine with. He was like 10 times better a guitar player than me. That's where I met Tony Slug as well. He was in Shotgun Rationale, and oddly enough, he was playing bass and I was playing guitar, which was completely stupid because Tony Slug was times better on guitar. So it's like upside down land again. It didn't make any sense, but it was fun.
Playing with Stinson from The Replacements in the side band, was the music fairly similar to or completely different from The Replacements?
I feel it was completely different. It was, I mean, same wheelhouse, I guess, in hindsight. Just, it's all rock and roll. The Replacements were a little more unhinged than what we were doing with Shotgun Rationale. Shotgun Rationale kind of had like a more, like, it depends on what era of The Replacements you're talking about. If you're talking about like Sorry Ma Forgot to Take Out the Trash and Stink, like, that stuff is just wild, you know what I mean? And what we were doing with Shotgun Rationale was less wild. It was good. Don't get me wrong. It was more New York and not so Midwest.
So you've been around the block quite a bit, obviously, in the States and over in Europe. Whereabouts in any of these bands did you play in the States? You mentioned earlier CBGBs. What bands would you have been playing with, or band that you would have played at a CBGBs?
I've played there a couple times. I played there with Shotgun Rationale, I think twice. And I played there when I was my European band, Dumbbell, who was from Germany. We played CBGBs. Of course, I'm a very, like, a lot of people will drop names like this as like, ooh, I played CBGBs. But I'd like to mention I played at CBGBs to like at 5 p.m. to like 30 people who couldn't give a shit. That's like, he's proud to say that I played.
Don't care about nothing anymore. care a lot about the things you say. Oh baby, how you fucked my head. Now things are changing, it's time you knew. I'll send the rap after you. After you. I used to lay awake shaking in my bed, and if we have passed on the road ahead. Now things have changed and I finally know there's only one way this can go. Down below. I don't care about nothing. I don't care about nothing anymore. I don't care about nothing. I don't care about nothing anymore. I don't care about nothing. I don't care about nothing anymore. I don't care about nothing. I don't care about nothing anymore. I don't care, don't care, don't care. I don't care, don't care, don't care. I don't care about nothing. I don't care about nothing anymore.
So, did you say you have a booking agent now that books those games for you?
Yeah, you're talking to him.
I was going to say, is that you doing it?
I didn't know I had any. The way the streams have always functioned is like I never actively searched out gigs until this Handsome Dick Manitoba. Like actively tried to book something, because before that it's like I had someone ask, hey, you want to play a show at place? I'm like, sure, why not? But like on the locally speaking, I never like actually actively sought out a gig. They just kind of fell in our lap. But that's, you know, I'm having to change that a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
The European tours, my friends help me book those. Like I have a French friend named Fabian. He books France. My friend Leon from Amsterdam booked a couple shows, and then I booked a couple shows in Germany myself, just by calling old friends.
Right.
Like my friend George, I worked at his club in the 90s, and he's still an agent all these years later.
Where will you be playing with Handsome Dick when you come back to Detroit? What club are you playing at then?
We're playing at Smalls Bar in Hamtramck.
And what are your favorite, or some of your favorite clubs in the Detroit metro area to play? What are some of the ones you like?
I like all of them.
Some girls are cool, some girls are fine. Some talk about love, some make you lose your mind. Some let me go, some threw me away. Some let me speechless. What can I say? Some girls are better than others. Some girls are barely worth the risk. Some give you hell like no other. Believe it, baby. We'll tell you my girl is the best. Some girls are fly, some girls are mean, some girls will blow up. They're like a psychopath scene. Some girls will nurse you, some girls are rude, some girls will light you up like a firework man.
The reason I was asking you that was not so much a favorite as far as that, but a favorite as part of how good the band could potentially sound there, because you don't seem like the kind of band that's going to be playing quiet too often. That's kind of what I was getting at.
Well, I like playing smalls because we played there so much. We kind of know how to manage ourselves there. Valero was difficult at first because we're a loud band. Aubrey, who does sound there, like he's just like, he'll come up to you and just shake his head like, nope, that ain't gonna fly. PA's relatively small. They've got a lounge there, and so you have to like learn how to tone it down a little bit on the. We're a guitar band. You can't turn the drummer down, so you have to depend on Greg to, okay, you play your amps quiet, I'll put you in the mid, and he does a great job. So I enjoy playing there, but it took a couple times of playing there to really figure out the magic and to realize that I had to listen to what the sound man says.
Right.
He knows his room better than I do. Just like Dave Mizabeth knows smalls, like he usually mixes at smalls when we play there. He knows that room super well.
Do you do anything as far as gigs on the west side? For example, the Token Lounge or maybe Road Rangers? I'm not sure if that's...
I played Road Rangers with another band. I like to dilly-dally around and play, like I play in other bands. I call it dilly-dallying, but it's nice to just play guitar and dance. They do all that heavy lifting, like singing and playing guitar. So I play with other bands, and we've played as Road Rangers and played at the Token with other bands that I was in. Like I was in Liz and the Luckouts for a minute, and I'm in a band with Wendy Case, like I stated before. We never played on the west side with them. We played west side, we played in Ann Arbor, The Blind Pig, or Live, which is a lot of fun. We played like with our buddies Stomp Rocket. Dan Mulholland, he's a stitch. I played the Token. I was in it. Started two bands simultaneously, the Strains, and I had another one called the Rat, and that was with Frankie Hollywood and with Savage. We played the Token with those guys. Frankie was only in the band for a hot minute, and he left, and then we had my friend Stevie playing bass, and we were a trio, and we played at the Token with that. But that band kind of fizzled out. The Strains became more busy, but Nick ended up playing drums on one of our European tours a couple years ago. Nick from the Rats, who's also in the Cult Hero.
Well, I mentioned Road Rangers because I was trying to lead that to another comment or question. Road Rangers, from the experiences I've been there, you can be loud, can be real loud, and they got a decent sized stage. The guy running the sound seems to know what he's doing. He's doing double duty with sound and lights, and the place is set up to where they can do a live video. Have you ever done a live video? I mean, something like that, or a live recording, I should say?
Trying to see us standing
Other than the new release that you're working on that you're not quite sure when that's coming out, I mean, obviously you got the 7-inch coming out. Are you doing anything else other than that? I mean, working on that and getting ready for the tour. Anything else you got in the work?
Oh, I'm always right. I write every day. I'm teeing up the next album.
You get it all ahead of time.
Yeah, that's stay ahead of the game because you never know when you're just going to fizzle out.
My last question to you. Have you gotten any kind of like a radio airplay with any of the bands on the road, you know, in Detroit or over in Europe?
For sure, everywhere. We've got lots of radio play, and, you know, I can even tell when it's happening because I'll occasionally get a royalty statement. So I've had stuff on French television, on the Vans, DVD, snowboarding. That one was a decent payday because it sold well. But those royalties dried up. That was many years ago. Yeah, I mean, we've been played on WDET. I've been told that we've been played on other stations, although I can't remember the names of them. There's one in like Lake Orion that played us. Oddly enough, like the European stations have spun us quite a bit. We're doing all right for a band that has just grassroots approach to things and no real promotional machine behind them except just playing gigs and doing our thing, you know. No one's sinking any money into us. No one's pushing us. You know, we're just existing and doing our thing, and people seem to like it.
I'm going to let you go. I would really appreciate you talking to me today, Paul. It's been really interesting. I hope to catch the band down the line. Like I said earlier, I was planning on catching you because I'd heard the music and really loved it at the Dogs show that you guys were supposed to play this last summer and had to cancel.
Had laryngitis.
Can't perform that way. But hopefully I can get out and see you when you play at Smalls. I'm sure you'll have it posted on Facebook as it gets closer to date. I look forward to that because I do like that club too. That club is cool.
Yeah, sound is great. If the noise is too much, you got bar, you can always adjourn to the bar, get
There you
yourself a
go.
drink, give your ears a break,
There you
and
go.
go back in and get pummeled.
Well, that's what rock and roll is all about, buddy.
Yep.
All right. Again, thank you, Paul, for talking to me today. I really appreciate it. I wish you and the band the best of luck and continue, keep at it because you guys are kicking ass. And I know how tough the business can be. A lot of competition, a lot of hard work you got to put into it. But you've got the experience and you've done it for a long time. And I can tell you have a great passion for it. You want to continue it. So kudos to you and your band for continuing on.
Thank you, sir.
All right, brother. We'll talk to you soon.
Have a good one.
All right, you too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
That was Paul Smith from the Detroit Metropolitan band called The Strains. Excellent hard rock punk kind of thing. If you haven't heard of them, you can catch them on all the streaming platforms, Spotify, Apple, all that stuff. As he said, they're going to be going out on tour. If you get a chance to check them out, do it. You'll love it. 3 guitars. You know how loud that's going to be. That's going to be kick-ass. If you have any vintage stereo gear that you need repaired, I got the place for you. It's called 7 Grand Audio. They're located at 25642 7 Mile in North Redford. Dash and Harry are 2 guys that have been working there going on 40 years. They really, really know their stuff, and they do really good work. Their hours are Monday through Friday, 10 to 6. The phone number there is 313-533-3635. And tell them Jimmy sent you. Anyway, with that being said, as I like to say always, keep rocking.